And we are back here on a Sunday morning. It's been a familiar political campaign strategy. You run as a Washington outsider who can actually get things done. A lot of energy around GOP governors right now as we think about 2016. Among them, Wisconsin Republican Governor Scott Walker. He believes the best choice for the next president will be a governor from outside D.C. Is he talking about himself? He's out with a new book, Unintimidated, a governor's story and a nation's challenge. And a big part of that story took place in the summer of 2012 when Walker became the first governor in U.S. history to survive a recall election. Governor Walker is in Madison this morning. Welcome back to Meet the Press, Governor.
Great to be with you, David. Thank you.
So let me ask you about the big debate here in Washington, which is about the budget. I want to just remind people what we're talking about, this deal. No government shutdowns for 2 years, deficit reduction of $23 billion. That's over 10 years, so it's not a lot. Reduces the amount of spending cuts, in other words, allows for more spending in some areas, and reduces cost of living increases for military retirees. So what I thought was significant about this is, yes, they're talking, it's more positive, the government's working a little bit better, but the reaction on the right's been pretty furious. Marco Rubio calling it un-American and unconservative. What do you say?
Well, two things come to mind. One, I think it shows the incredible leadership and respect that Paul Ryan brings to the table. He's one of those guys that kind of steps out of the role of a member of Congress and really stepped up to provide some leadership. But I think for those of us who believe the federal government's too big, too intrusive, too involved in our lives, what it tells us is if we want a really a budget deal we can wrap our arms around, we're going to have to win in the 2014 elections, particularly in key Senate races. And things are much different a year from now if Republicans are in charge of the Senate.
But do you support this deal now? Do you think it was the right thing for Republicans to do now under these circumstances?
Well, again, that's why I give Paul Ryan so much credit for his leadership. I think that's why you hear few, if any, criticisms against Paul himself, because people understand.
Right, but my question is, do you think this is a good idea? I mean, we know you like Paul Ryan. You guys are from Wisconsin, and he's showing leadership here. But do you think this is a good idea?
I do. I think it is good to go forward, but I also think we have to reinforce why, races like the ones we're going to have in Arkansas and Louisiana, North Carolina, and Alaska, and others across the country are so important. If you're going to bring conservative activists to the table, they have to see this for what it is, and it's really a big wake-up call for the fact that if Republicans, and in particular grassroots activists, want to see a stronger budget in the future, we've got to have some help in the United States Senate.
So let me ask you, as a governor, dealing with the Affordable Care Act, you've got over 5,000 people who have signed up via the exchanges in your state. Now, presumably you'd like to see the law go away as a conservative, and yet you seem to be doing something different in your state, where you'll take those federal subsidies and now allow people to go directly to the insurance companies. Is that a vote of support at some level for Obamacare?
No, in my case, in this state, obviously I did everything in my power. I allowed my attorney general on the first day I took office to join the federal lawsuit. I didn't take the state exchange. I didn't take the Medicaid expansion. But by the same token, I thought I wasn't going to let my citizens suffer. So we found a way for the first time in our state's history to cover everyone living in poverty, to transition people above poverty into the marketplace. And ultimately, we're making the case to the federal government that people in many of our counties where there are qualified health plans that aren't in exchanges, that if they can buy into those on their own, they should get the subsidy for that. But in the long haul, I would very much prefer to have a patient-centered plan. I think the American people, and clearly people here in my state, deserve to have health care and health decisions made by themselves and their families and not be predestined by the federal government. So I think that'd be a much better alternative.
How does the Affordable Care Act affect 2014? If we get into the new year, there's more sign-ups, it's going more smoothly, is it a losing issue for Republicans?
Oh, I still think it is. I mean, as much as this is all relative. I mean, the fact that the federal website is actually finally starting to work, I don't know that that's a ringing endorsement of Obamacare as a whole. Today's Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, front page of our largest paper here in the state of Wisconsin, talks about the negative impact of Obamacare on small businesses all across our state, where people are rushing out this December to renew their health insurance policies to avoid 25 to 30%, or in some cases up to 50 to 60% increases for small businesses' insurance premiums. I don't know about you, but in my state, the big thing I've heard from folks was overwhelmingly from small businesses who said they wanted access to affordable health care. If anything, the facts are showing it's anything but affordable in our state, and I think that's going to be a problem, not just for health care and not just for the policy, but what it means to the economy. It's tough to recover when so many small businesses are feeling the heat of rising premiums that the Affordable Care Act only exacerbates.
Let me ask you about 2016 in this context. I want to go back to what you said, heralding the leadership of Chairman Paul Ryan. Is this the model for the Republican Party to win national elections again, to trim your sails, to find common ground where it exists with the Democrats so that you can actually accomplish something? Is that the blueprint for how to win power again?
Well, I think leadership in general is. It's what Paul's tried to do in Washington. It's what 30 Republican governors are doing all across America. I point out in my book that austerity is not the answer. I think that's oftentimes been the focal point of Republicans nationally. But in the states, in 30 states, including most of the battleground states Barack Obama carried in the last 2 elections, Republicans are in charge as governors because we're talking about things that are about reform, not about austerity. We're talking about them in ways that are relevant, and we're ultimately showing we have the courage to act on them. And Paul is one of those rare people in Washington who's acting more like a governor than just a member of Congress.
Quickly, a lot of attention to Governor Chris Christie and his tough style, his brash style, blunt style, take on critics often in some colorful language. You had this to say, the Associated Press, a little bit earlier this fall, and you said, I just have a Midwestern filter. That's the difference. I'm willing to speak out, but I'm not going to call you an idiot. I'm just going to say that's a ridiculous question and move on. You know, the presidency, it said, goes through the Midwest. Is Midwestern nice the ticket to the presidency over somebody like a Chris Christie?
Well, I don't know so much about the style. I think that the substance of it is whether it's Chris or Bobby Jindal or John Kasich or Susanna Martinez or Nikki Haley.
You can't name all the Republicans.
I think in the end there's some pretty good outspoken folks out there that want to get things done, and that's what people want. They want candor, whether it's with a Midwestern filter or not. I think they want candor and they want proven performers, and that's what you get out of our Republican governors.
All right, Governor Scott Walker, thanks so much. Good to talk to you.
Good to be with you, David.